Okay, so let's talk about the economy. It's in a pretty piss poor shape right now. There's been a lot that's happened that's really bad. But let's just take a look for a second and see how we got here. Post Great Depression, there was something called the Glass-Steagall Act that was passed that basically prohibited banks from becoming investment houses. Banks should be secure places for their depositors to hold their money, and that money should not be lent out into risky investments. Now, banks have to loan your money out in order for them to make money off of interest and such, but they shouldn't be investing in things like mortgage-backed securities that led to the fall and in the residential real estate, commercial real estate markets. All of our home prices have declined. They were run on banks, and that's really what started this whole economic meltdown, was this subprime mortgage crisis. Basically banks investing in big chunks of mortgages investment securities that were backed by mortgages that were really bad mortgages and risky mortgages, subprime mortgages. And I know this is confusing for a lot of you, but you got to take my word at this. So in the late 90s, a portion of the Glass-Steagall Act was repealed, and the portion that was repealed allowed banks to invest in mortgage-backed securities. It was basically the Financial Modernization Act or something along those lines. That was bad, folks. That was a really, really bad move. It was voted on and for by most members of the House at the time and the majority of the Senate at the time, and it was signed into law by Bill Clinton. And I'm not putting the blame off on Bill Clinton or democratically controlled House or Senate. Most people voted for it. Overwhelming majority, including Republicans, voted for this to modernize the way the financial institutions work. The law of unintended consequences reared its head, though. Banks trying to make money invested in mortgage-backed securities that ultimately collapsed when interest rates rose. After 2 or 3 years on these adjustable rate mortgages, people couldn't make their mortgage payments. There's a bunch of foreclosures, et cetera, et cetera. That's where all of this started at. I'm all for the free market, but this is a great example of how we needed regulation, and that regulation was put into place decades ago, and then it was stripped away because we thought we were more modern and could keep a better control of it than we did then. This is just something that has got to stop, and this is what led to the economic downturn that we had directly. It's easy to trace. This is one area where the president, Mr. Obama, and I actually agree. He believes the same thing. It's on his website. You can go read it. It's pretty simple. Any economics professor will tell you that this is pretty much where it started at. So let's repeal that law from the late 90s. Let's look at the regulation. We've got to stop banks from taking our money that we deposit with them into our checking and savings account and putting it into these risky investments.